How did I say? Welcome back to Sunrise Daily. Well, now we've got Professor Oyewo. He's a professor of public law in University of Lagos. Thank you for coming on this morning, sir.
Thank you very much.
Well, just looking at all of these things, sometimes one wonder, when they say, what chance does the law have when you see different lawyers interpreting that section differently about what 2/3 really means? Are you concerned by that?
Well, one should be concerned because one of the things that the law, offers is certainty. And there is certainty in the law because apart from having the law on the statute book, you have interpretation by the court of law. So the court of law, they give flesh to the law. In a lot of cases, you find out that our constitutional provisions have been subjected to constitutional interpretations. So it's only when people don't do the research that is necessary to discover the law that they give discordant, positions of the law. Or maybe they try to ignore precedent and just for political expediency, take actions which eventually will be overruled. But by the time when it's overruled, the deed will have been done.
So that seems to be what somebody wants to play on.
That's
so you go to court, but we'll have a person there.
We will have had you out. And at the end of the day, when you get your victory in court, it will be an empty victory. So people play politics with the law.
Is there anything that can be done to serve as a deterrent so that you don't see anyone trying to take advantage of that?
Well, basically, there are some deterrents in terms of cost and in terms of, the court making statements that shows that that person basically have been professionally incompetent. But maybe it has to be taken a step further, particularly in the political arena, so that when people take such steps, there will be consequences that will empty whatever acts they've done retroactively. And we've seen such instances that the courts have been ingenious. You remember the case of Amechi, where the person who didn't even sit for an election ended up being declared the winner. But by and large, I think the profession also has to have a way of dealing with errant, legal practitioners who take obvious positions that are indefensible in the face of, the jurisprudence and precedent that we have in our law.
Prof, when you talked about we have the courts, especially when we have people come up with discordant interpretations, and the courts can help. But how easy is it to just take the Constitution as it is? How easy is it? I mean, let's look at that particular section, 50C.
Yeah.
Yeah. By 2/3 majority of the members. That's what is there, plain. What other interpretation do we need, or how often do we just take the Constitution as it is? How easy is it to do that?
There's a joke about when you say the Constitution, because some people say that the Constitution is a power map. And when you're dealing with power, there will always be contention and struggle for power. So even in the interpretation of the Constitution, it's a contest for power. So Section 50, clear, simple, literal English means, the members of the House. The members of the House are the members of the House. For the Senate, it's 109. So 2/3 majority of 109 should be what you're talking about. But then comes the interpretation that the members of the House could meet the members of the House that are present and voting who have met the minimum requirement for quorum. So once you've met the minimum requirement for quorum, then
which is 1/3.
Which is 1/3. So you go from 109 to 1/3 of 109 and whatever you find.
And then 2/3 of the 1/3.
But the courts have declared such interpretations to be, strange to the Constitution. But even in the face of precedent, people still go binding these interpretations for political expediency.
So how easy is it to separate the politics from the law?
Well, you see, politics, law, they have a role to play. Because even when you have the law, it has to go through the political process of being in operation. So the thing is now, what is the quality of those who are operating the law? And that's where we need to focus on. We need to improve the quality of politics, the democratic spirit of those who practice and interpret the law. It's not only in terms of the legislature or the executive, but generally the political firmament that we have. It has no respect for the law. It's always political expediency beyond the rule of law, or what is morally right, or what should be the proper value that we attach to what we do.
Then how easy is it to get that quality improved without enforcement?
Well, the challenge you have is that when you talk about the political process, there are so many players or stakeholders. So we have the civil society that's supposed to hold such politicians accountable. We have even, of course, we have the other stakeholders in terms of contest, those who are aggrieved and those who are victims. They can go to court and get judgment. But like we said, we have to keep on holding our political players to a higher standard of political behavior than we are seeing now.
I don't know if this is the case, but I hear this argument that 2/3 that is needed to remove a Senate president will mean a 2/3 of the National Assembly. Is it the National Assembly or is it the Senate?
It will be the Senate. According to Section 50, it talks about the President of the Senate and talks about the Speaker of the House. So the election is in each of the chambers. So for this, the Senate is the leader of, before he becomes the leader of the National Assembly. So by virtue of that, is the Senate we are talking about.
So in this instance now, when we're looking at the reconvening of the National Assembly, maybe sometimes in September 24th, we understand, but the agenda to be set there, one of which is to look at the possibility of approving the INEC budget for the 2019 general elections. Is that enough? Isn't that enough to have the Senate to have an emergency resumption?
Well, when you look at the Constitution has provision on this. Section 60 talks about how the activities of the houses is to be managed. And each of the houses are to set rules. So basically, they have house rules that guide the way they consider propositions that come by way of bills from the executive. And these involve committee stages and involve plenary hearings. So committee stages will precede plenary hearings. And from what you can see, both parties have a different interpretation of how the activities of the National Assembly is supposed to be done. And that is why the leadership has come out with the statement that, look, we need to have committee hearings. And in actual fact, there is engagement between the committees and INEC already. So basically, you ask the question, why must we re-roll this? And that brings in the politics there, that there is another agenda beyond what is the INEC agenda, which is the agenda of the way we started, impeaching or removing the leadership of the Senate and the House of Rep. And that seems to be the one that is filibustering this whole process. And of course, the chairman of APC has made it very clear that whenever they meet, it's either the president of the Senate resigns or he'll be removed. So that, of course, introduced the political aspect to what is going on. So this is not just law, this is not just constitution, this is politics.
So it turns out both of them are playing politics, and they will always want to see whoever will win, so they whip up all sorts of things.
And don't forget that the politics that has been played has really dented the democratic institution of the National Assembly when we had the invasion of the National Assembly by the DSS. This democracy, we have to let those people who are playing it to know that, look, people have paid the price, people have made sacrifices. You don't get there and start, doing like if we are in a gangster regime. This country has been a political, democratic since 1960. Irrespective of military interregnum, people must do the honorable thing. We don't go and attack another arm of government with, masked men. It's not done in these days.
But what do we do about the independence of institutions, say the security arm, for instance? Because this particular concern was raised prior to 2015 elections, where they thought, well, the civil society group, some of them thought, no, they don't want to see a president appointing an INEC chairman. They want to see independence of those bodies such that you don't see one using state apparatus to muscle the other. How far away or close are we from achieving all of this?
If you remember, this particular concern was what informed the Ways Panel Committee report. The Ways Panel looked at the whole electoral process, and they made several long-reaching recommendations. And unfortunately, a lot of it didn't see the light of day. And as a result of that, there is over-concentration of power in the presidency, particularly when it relates to independent organs that should not be subjected to such, remote control.